History Channel.
We're gonna have lots of discussion about different topics today.
Oh, like what?
Well, one being the empires of Persia, and two being the Commonwealth of Byzantium.
Well, don't forget about the Islamic empires and the Great War.
How could I forget? The first topic today we're going to be talking about is the Persian empires.
And that is going to be talked about historian Sofia Velasquez.
What was the Parthian Empire?
And what did they do?
So the Parthian Empire was based on Iran, and some things about them is that they're heavy on cavalry, and also they follow the example of the Achaemenid Empire.
What was the Seleucid Empire?
And what did they do?
So the Seleucid Empire inherited most of the Achaemenid Empire and also had its system as well as having rebellion from Persians, so it lost control over northern India and Iran.
Who was Alexander of Macedon?
And what did he do?
So during the decline of the Achaemenid Empire, Alexander Macedon invaded Persia in 334 BCE, and the Battle of Gaugamela marked the end of the Achaemenid.
When were the Persian Wars, and what happened?
So during the Persian Wars in 500 BCE, there was the rebellion of the Aenean Greeks, and the Persians failed to stop the rebellion and were spared for 150 years.
During the decline of the Achaemenid Empire, who was in charge?
And what role did he play?
During the decline of the Achaemenid Empire, the one who was in charge was Xerxes from 486 through 465 BCE, and some things that he did was retreat from the policy of toleration, and he also caused ill will and rebellion amongst the people.
During the reign of Darius, what was the Achaemenid administration like?
So during and after Darius' rule, they had 23 Persian governors, local officials from local population, and they also had communication systems.
Who ruled the Achaemenid Empire after Cyrus?
And why was he unique?
Cyrus's son's name is Cambyses, and he reigned from 530 to 522 BCE, and he's important because he conquered Egypt in 525 BCE.
Well, that's the end of the empires of Persia. What's going to be the next topic we're talking about?
Well, now we're going to be talking about the Commonwealth of Byzantium.
And that is going to be talked about by historian Janelle Sisson. So, what happened during the reign of Constantine?
The reign of Constantine was during 313 to 337, and he designated Byzantium as capital but renamed it to Constantinople. He built it there because it was closer to the Mediterranean, and the Mediterranean was a more wealthy side and it was more productive over there. The sudden change of location also made it easier for them to watch over the Sassanid Empire, which was really close to the Mediterranean.
Who was Justinian, and what did he contribute to the Byzantine Empire?
Justinian was also another ruler of the Byzantine Empire, and he ruled from 527 to 565. He was also known as the Sleepless Empire. A little background on him: he was born in a Macedonian peasant family. He was married to a woman named Theodora, who was a daughter of a bearkeeper at a circus. Although both of them were born and raised in a low-class family, they were both really intelligent and strong-willed and very disciplined, which is kind of the reason why they worked up to their high class that they are in now. Justinian also created a codification of Roman law, which was also known as the Justinian Code. The Justinian Code basically ordered a systematic review of Roman law that was more important than any other before. What was Leo III's opinions on religious beliefs? Well, Emperor Leo, who reigned from 717 to 741, during his reign, Byzantium was very worked up on promoting or making these religious icons, which were splendid pieces of art. These types of art were very useful and very purposeful during this time. They inspired many religious people, and it played a big part in religious practices. So in 726, he made this policy called iconoclasm, which literally meant the breaking of icons. Iconoclasm basically promoted destroying religious icons and prohibited from that being used in churches. The policy immediately struck religious protests and riots, and they were all throughout the empire. This also caused debates to happen around the whole empire as well for more than a century. With that being said, Leo III was very convinced that religious images were sinful.
During the reign of Basil II, what did he contribute to the Byzantine Empire?
Basil reigned from 976 to 1025 CE. He was known as Basil the Bulgar Slayer. During this time, Byzantine armies turned west and started to invade the neighboring Bulgars, who had built these strong kingdoms in Balkans. So after his battle in Claydon in 1014, he commanded his armies to blind 14,000 Bulgarian survivors. Though within the 14,000, he only spared few of some of them with one eye so they can guide the others home. From his reign, Byzantium then, once again, dominated the Mediterranean. Why did Prince Vladimir Kiev convert to Orthodox Christianity, and what were its effects? Russian princes began to want alliances with Byzantine rulers, and a lot of them started to show interest in Orthodox Christianity. In 989, Prince Vladimir Kiev converted to Orthodox Christianity, and he wanted his followers to follow in his example. Prince Vladimir of Kiev was mostly found drunk, and he maintained a harem of 800 girls. After his conversion, many of the Byzantine influences flowed into Russia. Well, that's it for today.
Wait, you forgot something.
Oh, can you also tell me about the events that led to the fall of Constantinople?
See? Oh.
Well, that's the end for the Commonwealth of Byzantium. What topic are we going to be learning about next?
Well, we're going to be talking about the Islamic empires.
Well, that topic's going to be discussed with historian Amara Good. Okay. Who are the most important rulers of the Ottoman dynasty?
And what was their contribution to the dynasty?
The first ruler and founder of the Ottoman dynasty was Osman Bey. And when the dynasty was first created, it was created along the borders of the Byzantine Empire. The next important ruler was Mehmed the Conqueror, and he reigned from 1451 to 1481. In 1453, he conquered Constantinople. During his reign, he also laid a foundation for a tightly centralized monarchy. He also completed the conquest of Serbia. Suleiman the Magnificent was also another important ruler of the Ottoman dynasty, and he ruled from 1520 to 1566. Suleiman promoted expansion in Southwest Asia and in Europe. He also conquered Baghdad. Suleiman also had a part in helping the dynasty create a major naval power.
Okay, enough of the Ottoman dynasty. Who founded the Safavid dynasty?
And who were the rulers after, and what were their contributions?
The Safavid dynasty was founded by Shah Ismail in 1501. Ismail took over the Iranian Polenta and launched expeditions to Anatolia, Central Asia, and Mesopotamia. Ismail was big into religion, so the dynasty changed their religious preferences in order to gain a popular support, and that was before they settled on a form of Shiaism that attracted nomadic Turkish tribes moving in the area. Ismail also made many enemies, and one of those enemies were the Ottoman Empire, and they actually battled on the plain of Chaldiran, and so the Ottomans did hurt the Safavids greatly, but they didn't have enough resources to completely destroy them. Another important ruler was Shah Abbas the Great, and he reigned from 1588 to 1629, and during his reign he encouraged the dynasty to trade with other lands, and he also reformed administrative and military institutions. Shah Ismail also attacked and defeated nomadic Uzbeks in Central Asia. He expelled Portuguese from Hormuz and completed the launch expeditions to conquer Anatolia, Mesopotamia, and Central Asia that Shah Ismail started.
Enough of this.
Yeah, too much about the Safavid dynasty.
So, how was the Mughal dynasty created?
And what did the rulers contribute to it?
So the Mughal Empire was founded in 1526 by Zahr-i-Din Muhammad. He was also known as Babar. Babar was mainly focused on conquering India, and with the help of gunpowdered weapons, he mounted invasions in 1523 and in 1525. He ended up conquering Delhi in 1526. The grandson of Babar, Akbar, created a centralized administrative structure with ministries. His campaigns consolidated Mughal power in Gujarat and Bengal. He also hoped that he could reduce tensions between Hindu and Muslim communities in India. He also encouraged the elaboration of a syncretic religion called the Divine Faith, which focuses attention on a ruler common to all ethnic, religion, and social groups in India. Another important ruler was Aurangzeb, and the empire reached its greatest extent under his rule from 1659 to 1707, and that was due to the fact that he waged a campaign that pushed the Mughals' rule over the entire subcontinent of India, except for a very small portion on the southern tip. Aurangzeb faced many rebellions throughout his reign, but religious tensions started to generate between Hindus and Muslims, and he was a Muslim himself. So he broke Akbar's policy of religious toleration by placing a tax on Hindus, and he also destroyed several famous Hindu temples and replaced them with mosques.
Our last topic today is going to be about the Great War.
And that is going to be discussed about by historian Lynette de la Torre. What causes sparked the First World War?
Let's talk about World War I. So one of the main causes of World War I was the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary. And 5 other main reasons was the growth of imperialism, nationalism, and militarism.
What was the alliance system?
So the alliance system was another key role in World War I. Countries felt loyal towards their allies or countries they had alliances with. And so when countries would have conflicts with other countries that they were allied with would also have conflict with that country.
What role did nationalism and propaganda play in the First World War?
So by World War I, Europe had filled their population's minds with propaganda that basically stated that their enemy was the lowest of lowest. So this led to Europe's people to go into the war with a lot of self-determination.
What was the U.S.'s key role in the First World War?
So the U.S.'s key role in the war was neutral until they joined the war, but they were suppliers for Great Britain and their allies throughout the 2 years they weren't in the war. They would supply with raw materials or money if needed, and then the U.S. joined in 1917.
Can you explain the trenches and what they were like?
So the trenches weren't a great place to live. There was mud up to the waist. There was a lot of dead bodies, disease, short supplies, and they were getting attacked from all ends. So they had to build the trenches higher with dead bodies, and they would have no change in socks or shoes. So they started growing this infection, and it was just terrible. It would eat away at their feet. And to go back to what I was saying about living in the trenches, it was horrible. Thousands of people were dying, and once gas was introduced to the war, the enemy would gas the area, and they didn't know that the gas was heavier than oxygen. So when they would run, they would retreat and go into the ditches that they digged into the trenches, and the gas would seep and they would just die because of the gas. They were trapped inside. And
To finish our discussion about the Great War, we have historian Alexandra Arenas.
Can you tell us about the course of the First World War in Asia, Africa, and the Pacific Ocean?
Basically how like the whole war started was that like one country started war with another country, and basically the attack country had allies, and like those allies actually like joined the fight, and the country that started the war also had allies that also joined the fight, and basically it just kept on going until like all the countries in Europe like decided to like start fighting against each other.
How were the causes of the Russian Revolution tied to the First World War, and how was Lenin involved?
Causes like such as like food storages or like uprisings were caused by World War I, and Lenin and his followers were like poised to destroy the traditional patterns and values of like Russian society and challenge like the institutions of liberal society everywhere.
What role did the Treaty of Versailles play in the First World War, and was it inevitable?
So basically like the treaties of Versailles like denied a German's navy and an air force, and it limited like their German army to like 100,000 troops, which like prohibited from them entering a political union. The Treaty of Versailles actually made World War II happen. Like it made it possible, but it wasn't like inevitable.
Well, what about the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk?
The Treaty of Brest-Litovsk gave the Germans like control of 1/3 of the Russian territory and like 1/4 of its population, which ended like the Russian involvement. But like out of those,
Okay. Between the Treaty of Versailles and the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, which one do you think was more harsh during the war?
but like out of those two treaties, like the Treaty of Versailles was like more harsh since it had to protect like the Europe's security.
What were the consequences of the First World War?
World War I was actually caused like the downfall of 4 monarchies, and like it made people like the war actually made more people to be like more open to ideologies.
How did Schieffelin participate in the First World War?
So Schieffelin, I think that's how you say it, concluded that like a massive successful surprise attack against France would like be enough to put off Britain from like becoming like involved with like the Continental War.
What was the mandate system?
The mandate system was like a compromise between like the Allies to retain like the former German Turkish colonies and the pre-Armistice declaration that annexation of territory was not there in the war.
What role did propaganda play in the war, and why was it necessary?
In the beginning of World War I, both sides of the conflict actually used propaganda, but it was like in order to shape the international opinion.